Okay, let's go live. 3, 2, 1, go. Hi everyone, and I'm just making sure that I'm actually going live. Looks like we are. Hello everyone, good evening, good morning, and good night if you're in Australia. It's 10 p.m. on a Saturday night, and if you're joining us live, welcome to the stream. I'm Ash, and I run a website called rpaforeveryone.com, and for this YouTube live series that we are in session 6 of the series, where we are trying to establish that anyone and everyone can learn a little bit of RPA to advance their career or maybe even make a career in RPA. I will be joined by Anirudh very shortly, and again, just to revise, like we've been doing throughout this series for the last 5 sessions, Anirudh is a mechanical engineer. He has no background in programming of any sorts, and he is trying to create a career, craft a career in robotic process automation. And we are trying to do this for him using UiPath as the chosen platform. The reason to use UiPath is that it's one of the first tools or first platforms to offer a community edition component, which means anyone and everyone can start for free, start learning for free, start developing and building automations on it for free. Robotic process automation is a very relatively new technology in overall tech, but it's still about 7-8 years old prominently, and it's been there for even longer. And what it does is robotic process automation is used for automating the boring repetitive tasks that we have in different organizations. So anything from checking emails on a regular basis and making certain decisions on the email, to even extracting invoices or documents from attached files in the invoices, or sorry, in the email, and we can extract them using a robot and completely automate that process to the point where someone just needs to eyeball that document and just make sure that everything's extracted properly and forward it along, so that the rest of the process can also be taken care of by the robot completely. This saves a lot of time on people's side, so that they can do more important stuff like upskilling, learning new technology, or learning new software, or anything that is in their team that has been pending for a long time, or of course taking care of customer complaints, customer success. That's the most important part of any business. We all want our customers to be happy and successful. So obviously, if you're doing a lot of repetitive stuff that doesn't teach you something new, then you're simply just wasting time or spending time doing something that must be done. So you're doing it for the sake of doing it, and not to get any value out of it for yourself or for your customers. And those are the things that we identify using robotic process automation and automate them, so that then you can just focus on the important stuff. That's just a little quick introduction of what RPA does. And because of this significant power or importance of robotic process automation, every company has been trying to implement a little bit or a lot of RPA in their business processes, which is why obviously we need a lot of professionals, a lot of robotic process automation developers and business analysts and testers to come and join the workforce, so that we can sustain the continuously growing demand that customers have for RPA technology. Now, yes, going back to UiPath, it allows you to learn for free, start for free, and almost every component that they have to offer, you can get a little taste of it through the community edition, which is a free software platform offered by UiPath, and which is why I got Anirudh to start learning on that platform. And every session so far, we have always reviewed his progress so far, and then decided or tried to craft or design the next stages or next steps for his journey forward. So let me introduce you one more time, Anirudh. So, hi Anirudh. I have
Hi, good evening.
good evening. So thanks for joining us, and thanks for joining on this call again, Anirudh. I
Thank
know
you.
you're
Thank you
not
for
doing
calling me again.
health-wise, you're struggling a little bit. So I really appreciate the effort that you're putting in, growing on this RPA journey. So thank you. Uh, I also have shared. Yeah. So there were two of me, so I just disappeared one of them. um, okay, so in on the screen you can probably see the progress tracker that we've been following and that I've set up for Anirudh. Let me see if I can make it slightly bigger so that everyone can read or follow along. So we've always been trying to promote that anyone who's interested in starting or continuing on a similar journey, if you're new to RPA, then this is just a very simple draft that I've got going for Anirudh, and we are kind of developing it as we go along. The idea is that after today's session, which is we are trying to make it a conclusive session. So this is the sixth, and we'll be taking a bit of a break, or the idea here is to get a full session today, and then after this session we will uh, go onward and upward for Anirudh, which means we will have regular check-ins, but the check-ins will probably be shorter in duration, and we'll just be improving, or as we say, continuous improvement in business processes. That is what we'll be doing on Anirudh's journey. That is, we will check back in and see what are the challenges, or if there are any challenges, or something new that Anirudh has learned over the last week or 2 weeks, and then we'll share that with all of our other listeners or viewers. And that is the idea. So we've been designing this step by step process, and I'm very happy for you to just copy this and follow along. I'm about to host this on a shareable resource so that you can download a template and do it for yourself.
Yeah,
But just to recap, what we've been doing for Anirudh is, first we got him to set up a an account on UiPath's different platforms. So Academy, which is their training website; cloud.uipath, which is where you can get your own community edition cloud account, which means most of their services, everything that is available under the community license, you can get them just by signing up on cloud.uipath.com. So you can do that for yourself after this session. And also thirdly, forum.uipath.com, which is not really a must have, or you know it won't stop you from learning even if you don't have a forum account, but it's strongly recommended, because once you connect your forum account with your cloud and academy account, which ideally you should use all the same account, because the login process is the same for all three. So you just create one account, you can use it across these three. And the idea is that as you make progress on your academy courses, they automatically reflect your current skill level on UiPath forums, and that is a very strong indicator of how well versed with UiPath platform you are. So it's strongly recommended to also get yourself a forum account and become an active member, so that the community knows about the user, so that's how you grow connections, and that's how you can get more help regularly or more quickly. Secondly, after getting started, I asked Anirudh to complete the foundation course, and we covered this briefly in the last session. But just to open it up again for anyone who's joining us for the first time, the foundation training, sorry, I'll have to most likely share this tab. So yeah, you should be able to see the foundation course now. So on this tab, you'll see that there are a lot of courses, or a lot of points under it. So curriculum, if you switch to that, you will see that all of these modules are included under that just one item, RPA Developer Foundation. So what is this? It is a learning plan. So if you are absolutely a beginner in RPA, this is the best place you can start learning about RPA, because it not only teaches you about UiPath in specific, but you also get a lot of awareness education about RPA, what RPA does, what it has been doing for industries or companies. If you feel like you've already done a lot of reading or a lot of learning about RPA, then you can choose a different learning plan for you. So you can just access the learning plans tab here and find something that suits you. For Anirudh's current skill level, we started with RPA Foundation. So let me switch back to the Excel tab. So once that course is done, I asked him to also become an active member on UiPath forum. Like I said already, it helps build up your profile and for the community to know who you are, which then when you are asking for help, there is already a healthy community or connection, a lot of connections that you've already built, who where people would be very quick to help you because you're already a very regular member. And it just in, encourages the whole community to be more active. Then thirdly, LinkedIn profile. That is, so LinkedIn is like the professional network there is. There are of course others, but everyone who's anywhere is on LinkedIn professionally. So if you make connections on LinkedIn, that's definitely it'll take you a long way in eventually when you start looking for a job opportunity or career advancements for the RPA field. So that's definitely one thing that I stressed on when we were doing those sessions back like 2 months, at least a month and a half ago. Mm, After that, we did a couple of sessions on RE framework. We did a lot of exception handling discussions. All of these are available. If you check the description of the video, you'll see that the playlist will be linked. If it's not, then I'll make sure that it is updated after the session. So the playlist has all the 5 sessions so far, and then it'll also automatically have this session added to it. So we have done a lot of discussion about what try catch blocks do for, or what exception handling does. And I think the highlight that came out of all of that discussion is or the easiest way we could describe it during our sessions is exception handling is basically your insurance policy. So just with life insurance or any accidental insurance, you you have it, but you always hope that you never have to use it. And that's kind of what exception handling does. You should have it, but the idea is, or the goal is to never have to use it. And that's a way. So unless if you don't have exception handling, you're basically going to have an absolute failure or a complete total failure of your system. But exception handling avoids that total failure and lets the program continue, either to safely exit the process at the end, or just skip that little like the specific part, but also not fail the overall process, just handle it in a successful way, or handle the failure by noting down the actual cause and then moving on to do other things. And these could be any number of different things that you need to do. For example, if it failed to download a statement from an online bank portal, you should still be able to log out at the end, because if something failed and your robot just left your net banking session on, then that's going to be a problem, and you wouldn't want that. So in order for your robot to safely still log out after something failed, that's an example of why you would want exception handling, so that you don't expose your systems to risk. So once that was done, we did another long discussion about UiPath Docs, which is an excellent resource aside from UiPath Academy to learn about UiPath. So if you just Google UiPath Docs queues, they will give you pretty much any information that you want in the UiPath world. In the last session, we saw Anirudh's baby, the first project that he built, and
Yeah.
how it was working. So he shared a few learnings, and he also shared some the experience of building his own project and watching it run. So that was definitely exciting. And we've been also tracking how he's doing on RPA community, UiPath community, and LinkedIn connections. He's been definitely growing on that front as well. So the one thing, and in my discussions with Anirudh, that came up is that whilst we are doing all of these things, learning about UiPath platform, that's absolutely a wonderful thing if you want to grow your career in UiPath. But I think the most important thing after you're done with the basic learning or even advanced learning is that how do you still finally go and look for jobs. So what we haven't covered so far in the first 5 sessions is how would you go and look for jobs, where what sort of preparation do you need to do, how do you start applying if you don't have project experience already. So we'll probably tackle a few of those things and some idea on what you could do. And it will be a different solution for everyone, so it's not going to
Yeah.
be a one size fits all, but at least we will try to manage it in the best way possible. So uh, after our session last week, what I asked Anirudh to go and do is follow some of the prominent UiPath MVPs. So UiPath MVPs are people who are helping out in the community for no, they're not designated as a, it's not a designated role from the organization. They're just doing it on their own time and just trying to help out in the community, of which I'm a proud member. But there are other UiPath MVPs who are doing some great things in terms of like helping people prepare for interview questions. So Nisarg Kadam is, like, shout out Nisarg. um,
Yeah.
he has a really good resource bank, a question bank available on YouTube. So if you went and looked up his name, you will find some really good interview questions or preparation tips on interviews. So Anirudh has been doing that for some time. So I think at this point I'll hand it over to Anirudh. And would you like to share what you've been learning in terms of preparing for interviews? What have you learned that you didn't that didn't come up during your training, let's say developer foundation or even advanced developer, but something that you learned just purely from watching interview questions prep videos?
Yes, absolutely. I have a couple of things to share. Am I audible now?
Yes, I can hear you. We can
Yeah,
hear you.
perfect. So I said I have a couple of things to share. As I'm following Nisar Kadam sir, even Mukesh Kala, so they have different series of interview questions. Okay, and the best part is they actually show what kind of question is asked. Because like in interviews, like we can see the interviewer, but we can't see the screen, right? But like if any question is asked, so they have a proper thing. Like if there is a question bank on RE framework only, there's a particular question bank on only on activities, only on variables or arguments. So that is very helpful. And Nisar Kadam also has one of the series which says top 30 questions, top 20 questions. So even those questions are very important. And yes, definitely they are adding value to my learning, and I'm getting clarity. um, so the interview part has been taken care by these two people, I must say.
Okay, that's good. And also,
Yeah.
so I think what's important to say is, that this is just my experience, but every time I've tried to go and watch some videos on YouTube about preparing for any technology, a lot of times it will bring up things that you didn't even know that
Yeah. Yeah.
that
Yeah.
would be um, asked. And that kind of sends you on a reverse engineering journey of you learn about a question and you don't have any idea of what the answer is going to be, but then it sends you on this hunt where you then go and find five new things that you didn't know about any that technology would do.
Absolutely.
So this is why also learning about, or researching your own interview questions is definitely a plus, as you are you know preparing to appear for interviews. So aside from preparing for interviews, after our last chat, have you
Yeah.
you already told me that you've built another design pattern. So aside from RE framework, you were trying something else. And what was your experience like with uh, building your next RE, or
Yeah, it
building
was
your next
it was
design
a
pattern?
RE frame. Yeah, it was a RE frame. But here in this RE frame, I did linear this thing, linear transactions. But
Okay.
as we know, by default, RE frame is designed for the queues,
Mm-hmm.
for queues transactions, like n number of transactions. Okay,
Yeah.
but for the linear transactions, uh, so definitely we have to do some kind of mods in the RE frame. So where the business exception and exceptions, even the success, that we have to comment it out, so that only that one transaction has been considered here in the initialization. So that was very surprising for me, that how we can manipulate a RE framework even for this thing, what we say, a linear transaction, as well as for the data table. There are some different modes that we have to do.
Mm-hmm.
So from our last call till today, I was doing, like, I was practicing the same thing. I tried to do it by myself first, and then see the use cases and perform it by myself. If I have any questions, then I used to go on forum and ask. Um, yeah,
Okay. Yeah, that's yeah. I mean, I guess that's the best way I would describe this approach as well. So I think you've been doing that quite spot on. Also, we've been talking behind the scenes. So yeah, thanks for just putting that all of that out there. So I just posted a poll to our listeners or viewers on YouTube. So, what are your most reliable ways to prepare for interviews? Do you just go to training portals and just start reading, or do you watch YouTube videos when you're researching a specific, you know, technology or preparing for that tech? Or do you rely on question banks or data dumps? Like there are a lot of dumps available that people just prepare from. So that's usually certifications, and people rely a lot on question banks. But even for interview questions, it helps sometimes. So if you're already, let's say, preparing for a certification exam, just reading all of the questions that you can get your hands on, taking practice tests, that can be a great way to learn about some things that might actually pop up in interviews. Also, one of the options that's not in there is just your personal experience. Nothing beats having the experience, because if something, if some action or some any particular component, if there is a question on it and you've actually personally used it, then you will know in and out of everything that's there. So even if there is a trick question, there's almost no way that you'll be tripped, because you've actually tried it by yourself. So if something comes up in your research for preparing for interviews where you're not even sure what that component is talking about, or some new keyword that you're just hearing for the first time, I would say not just read about it, but actually go and try building just a little, you know, a small piece of code for that, which then gives you some extra ideas or some other information that you didn't know you needed. And that's definitely a really great way to also, in prepare your knowledge. For example, you just mentioned linear transactions, right, Anirudh?
yeah,
And so you mentioned linear transactions and you mentioned queues. So um, someone, if you mentioned it, and if I were an interviewer, and if this were an interview, I would probably ask something related to that. So not exactly something that is linear transactions or queues, but I could say, you know um, I what if I postponed a queue item, or what if I change the priority of a queue item? Can I do that? That's something, if you've read about it, yes, you'll probably know. But if you've
yeah,
actually created a queue item by yourself, or tried to clone it, or tried to edit it, you would know
yeah.
in which views you can actually change the priority, in which views you can't, and what would you need to do if you wanted to change priority from high to normal, or normal to high. How many
Oh,
different types of priorities there are. So it's, you know someone who knows about that could go at any lengths talking about these things. So if you try it a couple of times for yourself, and that will definitely get your knowledge way up here. rather than just knowing theoretically about it. So definitely keep that in mind. Now, I think so.
I'm just
I
noting it
want,
down.
yeah, absolutely. So we, I guess, what I'll ask you to do, Anirudh, at the end, or after the session, is you also have access to the progress tracker. That's how we've been doing.
Yeah,
I'm setting up a progress tracker so that every student that wants to do this, take this journey with me, I share this progress tracker with them, and then we track or we edit the document together. So any notes that you're taking, just add them under session 6 here so that we can review them in future sessions when we do check-ins,
definitely.
right? So it doesn't have to be right now, but just go and do that now. uh, Sorry. So aside from this, I wanted to bring up another topic, which which I have talked about on my podcast. There is a podcast on YouTube and also on all of your podcast platforms. It's called RPA for Everyone podcast. That's also the name of my website. That's how the YouTube channel also started. So
Yeah,
the goal or the idea here is that we're trying to make it easy and simple for anyone to learn RPA. That has always been the goal of everything that I am making or putting out on this YouTube channel. So uh, in terms of starting your journey, I think it's important that we cover a few different aspects of what it means to build a career in RPA. And if you went and researched RPA, you'll probably read about the tools and how to become a developer, or you'd probably just or so either you'll see a lot of technical stuff that is going deeper in the knowledge area where they'll teach you every little detail about the platform, or they'll talk to you as if you're a business owner or someone who's making decisions on a company's behalf whether to use RPA or which platform to use, and they will talk about the business benefits, the return on investment, return of investment, stuff like that. So there are these two very you know far out spectrums where you either go all technical or you go all business. But if you are personally trying to take on RPA as a career path, or even if you are just someone who's involved in a project that uses RPA, so it's important to know a few different aspects of what it means to work in RPA. So that's why I've been talking about this ABCD framework. And just like when we learn a new language, we start with the basics, the alphabet. So if you're learning English, you would start with ABCD. So that's how I was taking on this approach. If you started learning about RPA, what would be the ABCD of RPA? And the the con sorry, so the first few episodes of the podcast are dedicated to these four letters, and I would like to just cover them in a brief session, just taking a little bit of time on this session so that you're at least aware of what to expect if you are trying to grow in the RPA community or grow
yes,
yourself an RPA career. So let's start with A. So A, obviously, you probably guessed it stands for automation. So you would need to know about A for automation. So everything that goes in the world of automation, what tools are there, what kind of technology or what kind of platforms are available. So if you go and watch the podcast episode, which is literally called Everything About Automation, you will learn that I discuss a few different leading platforms that are currently making you know the biggest making heads turn in terms of like growing in the industry. So there's UiPath, of course, and there's Automation Anywhere. There was Blue Prism. There's IBM RPA, Pega, and a ton of others. There's also Microsoft Power Automate that has recently started to surface a lot. Microsoft is investing a lot, and also they are growing the Power Platform quite significantly, and that's definitely worth a mention here. So if you learn about all of these different tools, and I used a website called G2. So let me bring it up on screen. So if you look at the shared screen now, you'll see that there is a grid for robotic process automation. This website G2 is a website where you can compare all sorts of different technologies. So this specifically targets robotic process automation, but for argument's sake, you could even learn about different technology or different, if you wanted to, let's say, explore something in AI, this is probably a really good resource for you to do that. AI being, really the flavor of the month, as they call it. So, in my automation episode in the podcast, I shared this on the screen, and also I discussed a few things about what this chart really means. So let me see if I can bring it, yeah, make it slightly bigger. So what you get here is this axis. The If you look at the axes, their market presence and satisfaction. So how satisfied are the customers using it, and what sort of market presence does this tool have? So the higher on vertical axis, the closer you are to the top, the better. And in here, the further out towards right you are, the better again. So someone with highest satisfaction ratio is high performer.
Yeah.
Someone with market presence, low market presence, but really good satisfaction, they are high performers. Someone with great market presence and also great satisfaction, they're leaders. So that's how you would read this graph.
Yeah.
Excuse me. So that graph is at the bottom of the page. Okay, bringing it back here. So as you can see, UiPath, Automation Anywhere, and IBM, they've always been, IBM is a, relatively recent joining of this spectrum, but leaders, UiPath and Automation Anywhere and Blue Prism was leading this chart for quite a while. And now, as you can see, Microsoft is also quite up there. So the further out you are on this side, the that's how good you are considered. So UiPath is obviously way up there, which is why um, that's on everyone's mind right now. But if you wanted to do a lot more research on it, you can just go and Google this. That list is linked to the video that I mentioned earlier. I'll also
Yeah.
link that in this video's description. But you can actually study different aspects of every tool. You can try for free. Some of them will not be available to try for free, so you can get a quote, which is probably a business thing to do. If you're just someone trying to learn the platform, you can definitely get started on some of these platforms. So I go in a lot more detail in that, because that whole episode is dedicated to this, so definitely go and have a listen.
Okay.
um, the episodes for B, C, and D are still in the pipeline. They'll be released later this year. But let's move on to those letters, and I'll quickly cover them. Because when and so okay, so let me start with B. B is business analysis. So let's go here, a code automation. So what is business analysis? And we generally know what business analysis is. Sorry, I was sharing the wrong tab. I just brought it back. So business analysis is, it's nothing new. It's it exists at every level of businesses. In any sort of business, small or big, you need business analysts to come and understand where the business is going in general. So
Yeah.
what is so special about the business analysis field in RPA, and why should you know about it? Even if you're trying to become a developer or someone who doesn't really need to be in the weeds of automation, business analysis is a part that you should still be aware of. And why I say it is that in a typical software development life cycle, which is, software engineering has been around for literally decades now, and business analysis is something that's always been a part of it. So a business analyst is a person who sits between a very technical person who will build you the best, like state of the art technology solution. It could be a website, or it could be a software that performs behind the scenes, but they are the ones who do the real magic in terms of programming. And then on the other side you have businesses. So stakeholders, business stakeholders, they could be, company bosses, or CFOs, CXOs, like CEO, CTO, CFO, people like that, or uh, people in that food chain, like, slightly on lower levels, but they have nothing to do with technology. They are results. They are more focused on what sort of results the solution can produce. A business
Yeah.
analyst is the person who makes them communicate, or makes it easier for them to communicate. So they are the facilitators. They make sure that the technical side understands what the business wants, and business understands what the technical language is, or
Yes.
clear out all the jargon, make it easier to understand. So that has been always the role, and it goes much more because they need to also understand both these sides really strong. So to be a good BA, you need to understand both sentiments, like both side sentiments, very well. But it slightly changes in RPA, in my opinion. And why is that? So, like I said, always in software development lifecycle, this has been the case. But um, when business wants a solution, they just have a picture in mind, and I'm talking about general software development, not RPA specific. They have a general picture in mind what they want, and they will say that, we want to be able to do this. And if I'm building a website, they'll just say, I want some way to download a report every day for how the business is going, or every quarter. A business analyst will then design, or they will streamline that process so that they can get to, or give very specific instructions to the developers how to build that. And they will involve stakeholders at every stage so that everyone's across what the next picture or final picture is going to be. In
Yes.
RPA, what happens is there's already a process which you are trying to automate, because of which you you're sort of already confined, or already there's a requirement, like this is the process, this is the manual process. You have an option to optimize it. For example, if I'm doing making 3 clicks to go to like a menu, and then a sub menu, and then a sub menu, but there's also a shortcut by simply pressing, let's say, control SS, and then it will save that. So
Hotkeys.
if I can use a keyboard shortcut instead of clicking 3 times, that's optimization. That's, you
Yeah.
could do something like that for sure, but you ultimately still need to save the report. If you don't do that, then you don't have a win, right? So optimization is one thing, but your final outcome is still very much already defined exactly how it should be. And when we start to build, if you're a developer and when you start to build out an automation solution, you will be going through to BA, but there will be very slight, um, some very nuanced controls in that software, target software that you're trying to automate on, for which it's sometimes much easier to just go to the person who is manually doing that process, and then you just ask them that question, and they'll quickly tell you the answer, which
Yeah.
means you need to understand what the business analyst is doing there as well. So even if you are just a developer, you need to understand how the business analyst is trying to make this process easier for you. And that way, if you needed to just quickly quickly do finish a task or something that you are building, and there's a small part that you are struggling with, you could just quickly go to the SME, as they call the people who run the processes manually. When you try to automate them, the person who is manually doing it is called SME, which is subject matter experts. That's the generally given term to people who are doing that process currently, because they know in and out of the process. So you should understand a little bit of business analysis, because in some cases there won't be a business analyst present. You could directly be working with an SME, and it might be up to you to design or streamline the process before you actually start automating it. So
Yes.
optimization is necessary, and sometimes a business analyst may not be present at all times of development. That's all phases of development, which is why it's important for you to understand a little bit of it as well. uh, Before I go to the next one, do you like, is there any are there any questions? Was that clear, or am I rambling on too much? Do you have any questions? People watching the stream, do you have questions, Anirudh? Both of you.
And I'm just imagining how the things have been, like you're telling the things, okay. And this is much important to understand what exactly the roles are, of the roles and responsibilities of the people are, and to whom I shall, get the things, the exact idea or documents I shall get from the people, and whom shall I contact. Even that thing is also important in real time working scenarios.
Yep.
Yeah.
So yeah, maybe I'll try to make it a little more relevant in the sense, like, let me give you a real life example. Let's say you are a developer, and I'm a um, I'm someone who works in the finance team of a company. I'm not a
Yeah.
bank. It's just a company that does some other business. It could be leasing, or car sales, or anything like that. But I I work in that company where I'm in charge, or I'm in a team that looks after checking the finances or checking the bank balances, so that we know exactly at what point we are starting today, and then so that we can then tally at the end of the day and say we made this much money today, or we lost this much money today, depending on the day of the month. So
Okay.
let's say my job, the business opens at 9 a.m. So my job every day is to come to office before 9 a.m., or at least half an hour before 9 a.m., so 8:30 or before that. And I should go to three different banks that we have accounts with. So let's consider international banks, so that if someone is in India, they'll find probably HDFC, ICICI to be more relevant. But let's
Relevant,
say
yeah.
HSBC, or Bank of America, something that's globally known. So let's say we have accounts with like two three different banks, and my job is to download the statements from each bank every morning, so that I have the exact figure down to the last cents or
Transaction.
paise. Yeah, so that I know exactly what was our opening balance, and then so that at the end of the day, when all the remittances have gone out, and debits, credits, all of that is settled, we know exactly how we closed the balance. Did we end up with losing money or making money? Yeah, let's
Yeah.
say
Yeah.
that's my job. So that's why we must have an accurate figure before business really starts at 9 a.m. That's the idea. Now if you started building that automation there, and there's a BA, they will design things like, okay, so what do you do currently? And I'll tell them, okay, so I go to bankname.com, I put this username and credential which has been created for my team or my user, and then I go to you know statements, I go debit or credit, and then I just select yesterday and today, so that I have exactly what you know what how much business was done in the last 24 hours. And then I do this every day repeatedly, so that's why I always have one day worth of data. But it's my job to do that every morning. So I'll give you exactly those steps, and the business analyst finalize that. So this is the current process. That I'm kind of describing how a typical automation would be built, and it's So don't quote me on this, because this is not how simple it looks in reality. So
Actually,
there will be much more due diligence involved with every project, as it should be. But the general idea is that a business analyst and a developer will try to sit down and understand with the person who's currently doing it manually, to see exactly how many steps they go through to get that job done. So if it's just downloading one statement, they'll ask me, where do I find that? Is it a template that, like, I just click on one pre-saved setting that automatically says yesterday and today, just to download the statement for the last 24 hours? Or is it that I have to always detect, okay, so today is 9th September, so I should download 8 September to 9 September? Do I have to populate the dates every day? Or does the bank automatically offer some kind of shortcut where you just say download yesterday's statement? It depends from system to system. So every system will have a different step, different sequence of steps to get to that outcome. So if I wanted to download three different banks statements, they all those three, if there are three different banks, they would be very different in how they work. They won't have the exact same option. So uh, we will need to sit down and understand what steps are involved, what kind of errors that website might present, are there any downtimes? So there are so many questions. All of these questions are um, considered at the start of the process. We design the process accordingly, and then we come up with a design document where we say, developer will say, this is how exactly I'm going to build it out. These are the exceptions, possible exceptions, like invalid login password, or invalid, like statement not found. All of these errors will be already accounted for. All of this will be done. But then after that, you um, you know you when you're building, so you are the developer, right, and I'm the process expert. So when you're building it out, one day you suddenly run into a completely new error which you had no idea about, and I didn't tell you about. It could be something like, um, what's a good example? When you're downloading bank statements, um, no bank statement available for bank holidays, right? That's something that just came up because bank holidays were not considered when we were building out or designing the process. So some national holiday or some bank holiday statements are not pre- prepared by the bank, and if that error comes, it won't come up when we are building the process, because let's say bank holiday, the first bank holiday after you started building out the process was 2 months later, and now you're in the middle of the process, and suddenly now you're getting this error one fine day when you're testing. So then that's something you missed out. For you to go and go through this business, through the business analyst, and then eventually reach out to subject matter expert to get the answer, and then conveying it back, it will be a longer process. So many times these three different parts of the process, like three different members of this team, they work closely together. So even if BA is in the communication, a developer might just directly reach out to the process expert, like you reaching out to me, and the BA is just in CC, and you would ask me, hey man, like I'm getting this error, so what should I do? So I would just answer that, and we can simply amend that. Or if it's a really big change, then we'll probably have to have a different conversation. But for you to understand how that process overall works, and to have that confidence with your business analyst, it's important for you to also understand whether this is just a simple change and you can simply go and make it, or is it something that you need to go through a higher approval chain to say, we didn't plan for this, but now this whole new thing has come up, and we may not be able to build it straightforward. We have to make some extra adjustments, which then will delay the delivery, or anything of that sort. So there are a lot of other conversations that could potentially happen after that thing comes up. So this is why it's important to understand what BA does in your project,
yeah,
because you may not have access to a BA so far down the
seriously.
development pipeline, right? If the BA is there only for a limited number of days, that billing is finished, now you're developing and you run into a problem, you should at least have that enough, that level of confidence with the customer team to reach out to them and explain the problem, which then automatically goes into my third point, which is C. And this is the one that most most of the time gets ignored most, which is communication. So over my time, working as an RPA developer in last like 7 or 8 years, I think the one thing that has helped me most during the difficult or more challenging parts of the development process, like my challenging parts of my job, is the ability to communicate. Because if you can communicate a problem in a straightforward way, or in a way that it makes sense, rather than a lot of just so as a developer, I had a tendency of always going into deep technical. I still do. A lot of times I'll just go on this rant where I'm just talking about like deepest technical issues, which sometimes are irrelevant to a stakeholder who is coming to it from a business, or a different point of view. Their role does not involve talking about technology day in day out, and whatever I'm saying makes no sense. It only confuses, or it causes more confusion. So clear communication and communicating information in a way that actually makes sense to the person who's listening. So depending on what their current role is, if you are aware, and if you make sure that you speak to them in that exact angle. So let's say if you are talking to a business analyst, absolutely they are already technically as sound as you are, so they understand exactly what you are talking about, and you could explain to them in a technical way what's going wrong. But if you are directly faced with a subject matter expert whose only job so far is, like, as far as your RPA project is concerned, their only job is to give you information about what they do. So again, going back to our dynamic, you are the developer and you asked me something about, okay, so I'm getting this error, and then I tell you that yeah, so if the bank holiday, if it says bank holiday, you just say close and then skip that, like skip the process. And then if you start going about like, oh, but then I have to throw a business rule exception, and how will I mark the transaction as failed? Or do you want it failed as business exception or system exception? Should I continue for more transaction items? And I was like, what is transaction item? What queues? What business exception? Like business exception, yes, probably I understand. But what are you talking about? Like, what are queues? What are transactions? If we haven't had a conversation before how UiPath is going to handle everyday's tasks, and
Yeah.
you just start talking about queues, transactions, and high priority, low priority, I'll have no idea what you're saying. And then that's where, as a developer, you might be required, or it is necessary for you to talk to me, or talk to the person in a way they understand, where you will say, so you know what, if it fails because today is a bank holiday, but we have to download three more if it happens on the first one, it's likely that other two banks will also not have it. What do you want me to do? Should I just say none of the bank, like if one fails I should not try the other two, or do you want me to try the other two as well? If you ask in that way, there was no mention of queues, transactions, fail, business rule, none of that. You just ask me a simple question: what should I do if one bank says that it's a bank holiday, no statements available? Should I try the other two, or will they also say the same thing? And then as a business expert, I will say, you know what, I'll say, go and have fail all those three. So try but fail. Or I might say, yeah, it makes sense if you just find one as a business except, like if one is saying it's bank holiday, the other two are also going to say the same thing, just skip it, because it saves everyone's time. So I could
Absolutely.
have those two approaches. So it makes it easier for you to, like, you got what the answer you needed, and you went your way and you built the process accordingly. But if you start complicating by throwing a lot of technical jargon, it only confuses everyone more. So that's why, and this was just a um, you know sometimes very real example of importance of communication, but even in general, your communication skills will come in handy in, or they will be important for you in so many different ways. For example, if you if you are building a process, there will be business rule exceptions, there will be email notifications sent out, and if you're building something for your customer, when your emails, the email that your robot sends out, when it has spelling mistakes or typing errors, or in like spelling mistakes is very common, or grammatical mistakes. So all of these things, I'm not saying to you that you should go and join an English course now, but it just enough to not make it look professional. For example, if your robot is sending out an email communication, what typically happens is you will be asked to say in the to field, like who is it being sent to, and they will say this is the group of people that you should send it to. It could be a mailing list, or it could be just two people to begin with, and usually this is it's kept configurable. So now RE framework, you have worked on that, so it'll be an asset that you configure. And
Yes.
when you build the process, they'll say, there are these two guys, just send them the notification, right? So you put the two email addresses in asset, and the robot will send to those recipients. Eventually, as the process grows, more uh, visible, so like it's expanded to different departments. Let's say they put out a whole new mailing list which contains 30 people, and they just simply updated one asset one day, and instead of going to two people who you built that machine, like built that process together with, it could be like one is BA or one is the process expert. Now instead it's going to 50 different people or 30 different people, and they could be you know very highly placed financial officers, or someone who has a very high visibility, so they also report to a lot of different people. I mean, they also can communicate or forward that to a lot of different people. When your robot sends out a message with incorrect wording, or a very unprofessional looking template, then it puts the whole robot project in a bad light. And
Yeah.
that's just again a very real example of how important it is to have good communication skills. So your communication skills, not only spoken, like across from a person in front, like in a table or in a meeting room, but also how you communicate in email, how you communicate the the failures or the challenges in whatever you're building. It's very important in at all of these levels that that you focus on the communication you're trying to do. And this is not something that will happen overnight, so of course you know um, it, not the purpose of this session, but I'm still going on about this because using tools like Grammarly, I find it really really helpful to use Grammarly as a free software, which suggests what how you should be phrasing your sentences. You get that same suggestions enough number of times, and you'll never make that mistake again. You just start typing it that way, because Grammarly is going to um,
Take care.
prompt it
Take care of
out.
the
So
things.
yeah, so I'll make a note here. If you want to check it out, it's just a free software that you install, and it as you type, you'll see corrections or suggestions from it. So communication, very important. It has helped me um, handle a lot of situations much easier, because I was able to define precisely what my challenge was. And so anyone who you are interfaced with, or working with, they also want all of us to succeed. No one is there to uh, just count the faults, or point out problems. But if you're not able to clearly communicate why something's taking time, or some challenge has suddenly popped up, then it becomes a much more difficult situation to handle. So communication, in specifically in RPA, because even as a developer, you are not behind the protected business analyst armor a lot of time. So the shield of BA may or may not be there. So as a developer, it's very important that you also can communicate issues and communicate successes even very properly. So definitely focus on that. And D is finally development. So I wanted to talk about development a little more in terms of, for someone like you, Anirudh, coming from a non-programming background,
Yeah.
there are a few things that you could try and you should try in improving your development skills. So um, I at the start of our session, thanks for everyone who are still sticking around. I can see that we are going a little over time, but there are so many people who are still watching. So thanks everyone for watching. But at the start, I mentioned that robotic process automation is, it's everywhere and everyone's trying to learn, and companies want more and more people to, um, you know, to be able to code in RPA. So I've used this word code a lot of times, but the biggest highlight of UiPath or any other such RPA tools is that they are called low code, no code tool, which means you need to use minimal or sometimes zero coding to build an automation process. So even if it's all software automation, but you yourself don't need to know coding to build that. Now that is a promise, and I mean that's the promise made by RPA tools, RPA platforms, and it has a very tiny asterisk associated with it. Asterisk mean like the star conditions apply, So
Yeah.
the conditions apply is that you you don't need to write code in the sense you don't need to, like, if you have even a little bit of idea of what programming languages look like, they're not sentences, they're not readable material. It's not
Text.
like a paragraph. So if you read it, it won't make any sense to you if you don't know what that programming language is or how the syntax works. um, so I like to compare this to a normal language. So in your, let's talk about English because we are all communicating in English. So in English, I want to construct a grammatically correct statement or correct sentence. So what do I need to know? I need to know the syntax, meaning, so this, I'll use a simple example, which is like, my name is Ash, and or let's use an even simpler example, like, I go to school. So if we look at English, the subject comes first. Like, I is the subject, meaning that person. I am the one performing the action. Go is the verb, and school is the object. So like, I am going to school. So subject, verb, object. And then if you're aware of any other languages, some of them are subject, object, verb, or verb, not really verb, but subject, object, verb. So some of my viewers are Hindi. Anirudh, you also speak Hindi or Marathi. So
Yeah.
like, um, that's not a subject, verb, object, because in Hindi you would say मैं school जाता हूँ, which is like, who is जाता हूँ is the verb, so you put the
Verb
verb at the
actually.
end.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the action is put at the last, and school is the second, which is like, object is first. So subject, object, verb, instead of subject, verb, object. That is the syntax. But even if I used a perfectly good syntax and whatever I said still made no sense, be, like, um, I'm thinking about something
Hmm.
funny that makes no sense. Like, it's grammatically correct, but it makes no sense. Like, um, I like monkeys, so there are bananas in my lunchbox. It's a it's a grammatically correct statement, but it makes no sense. Like that. Those two things have nothing to do with each other. So,
Yeah.
jokes aside, the point of this exercise or point of making this distinction is that if I know syntax very well, I still may construct a very bad sentence, which makes no sense. So if I put it, let's use that same tool again. If I put it in Grammarly, Grammarly will not complain saying, oh, you know, I love monkeys, so I have bananas in my lunchbox, right? It's a perfectly good sentence, but it's a completely senseless sentence as well, you know. So that's what a lot of people lose sense of when they are programming. So what is grammar in a language is syntax in programming languages. So your grammar may be absolutely right, which means your syntax may be absolutely right, but your code still may not make any sense at all. So that part of in English language, it would be called semantics. So in that monkey statement, what I said was a grammatically correct sentence, but the semantics was all messed up because like the semantics was really bad. It makes no sense, or it's a very silly sentence. And a lot of people miss that semantics part in their programming languages. So you use grammar right, which means you use syntax right, but you use the semantics wrong, which in programming language becomes logic. So if your logic is flawed, then syntax will not matter because your program or your robot will still be doing something very wrong. So your compiler, your UiPath Studio will not complain, but when you run it, it will do something completely wrong. And that logic is what takes time to build up. The more you do, the better you understand how your robot is going to think. So even as you are writing the code, you will already know the mistakes that your robot could potentially make. Just like when we say, you speak a language enough and then you can start to form sentences in your mind. When I started learning English, which is I'm not originally an English speaker, so when I was in very early days when I was learning to speak English, I would have to think twice before I said something because I knew it was going to be wrong. So you have to do it enough, and then at some point I'll I'm still not there, but at some point I'll probably get to a place where I can just speak without thinking about it, and that takes time. So just like it took time for many of us bilingual people to get better with English, it's the same with programming languages. Your logic will get better over time, and at one point you won't even have to think about it. When you know, like, pull one activity on your UiPath Studio canvas, you'll know what the next one is going to be. Or if you pull something, you'll immediately think, oh, I can't get to this until I do activity one first. So
Yes.
things like that. So focus on your logic, because syntax, there is Google. For syntax there is Google. So if you want to, just like languages, if you want to learn or get better at a programming language, you could literally just go to Google and say UiPath how to get file name, right? UiPath forum get file name, and then it'll give you so many examples of how to read a file name from your computer. So you could do that, but if you don't know why you are trying to learn or understand, like, get the file name from your disk, then it doesn't matter if your syntax is correct. And those are the kind of things that take time and that you should be focusing on. So in in these for development, I think the focus should be grammar versus semantics. That is syntax versus logic. Grammar and syntax you can learn from Google. Semantics and logic, they take time. That's the key message that I have in development. And for communication, I've already said what I wanted to say. So uh, if you and this is Anirudh for you and for anyone who else, anyone else watching, these four things I believe are really strong, and each of them is equally important. Most of the times when people are trying to build a career in RPA, they focus on these two things. They want to be sure what automation they're using. So let's say I get offered a job in Automation Anywhere. I go and just fully prepare interview questions on Automation Anywhere. I get the job, and then I start getting into development. But if I don't understand these other two important pillars, I will make mistakes that will be very difficult for me to correct in future.
Yeah.
And also, if someone else has to maintain my code, which is almost always the case, you will build something, but you, for your own good and also for the companies, you won't be working on that same project forever. At one point it will either come out of maintenance because it's just 100% self-sustainable, which is not really, it's a best case scenario, but usually your robot will need some kind of maintenance over time. And quite a lot of times you will move on to another job or you will move on to another project, and someone else will be maintaining your code. So
Yeah.
knowing all four aspects of automation will definitely help you build much better automation processes. Your robots will be much more robust, so that someone else maintaining the code won't have to suffer, or even you yourself will find it really easy. If you can analyze the process properly, you will know exactly which provisions to build in advance, so that something else comes up in future. For example, if you want, in that example, in the three banks, if you wanted to add a fourth bank, what's your best case scenario, or what is the best way for you to add it without making a lot of
Changes.
external changes to your existing automation? For example, using your linear transactions example, does it make sense to make each bank a queue item, so that instead of three queue items you feed four new queue items, and the fourth one is the fourth bank, and then it goes to that one and downloads? Or do you always say, whenever this process runs, whether it's RE framework or not, you always go and download A, B, C, D, all four banks nonetheless? So that means you build whole thing in for every run. So if it is run two times, you will download four banks two times, like eight statements. Or if you built it in a linear transaction kind of way, let's say you just wanted to retry HDFC Bank, which was bank number 3, you can just simply recreate the queue item 3 and not worry about queue item 1, 2, and 4. You just retry 3, it'll only download one extra statement, and then that's it. So these are the things you need to understand in the business analysis phase. Even if you are not the BA, if you have a dedicated BA, wonderful, but still, for you to understand what's potentially going to happen in future, it's important for you to be an integral part of that discussion. And same with communication. Like, if you are able to communicate, if you are able to ask the right questions ahead of time to the subject matter expert, to the other stakeholders, then you will know in the best possible situation, like best possible way, at least at until the time the build is commenced or build is complete, that you had the best information possible. Because if you don't ask effective questions, the SME may not know exactly what the robot thinks like, and they will give you information based on your questions. So it's important for you to ask the right questions, which is also where communication is important. So these are a few things I would like to leave you with for the time being. And um, I think for our next check-in, which I haven't planned our next check-in yet, but I would really like for you to get to a place where we could maybe have an offline discussion about interview questions. So something like a mock interview that we just plan offline, and then we'll come back and do another check-in on the progress. So at that point in time, so of everything that I said, was there any part that was confusing, or is there any question
Absolutely.
about it?
No. I got a lot of clarity because all these things. See, development part can be taken care. Interview questions can be solved or can be given the answers by listening to them or by doing a lot of practice again. Even if I don't know anything, I can go and search again and do that thing. Okay, but logical, that thing is what I have to work on by myself. Where the most important point which I have literally highlighted is that I have to ask effective questions. Whenever I'm watching videos and just try to mimic the use cases in the whichever, either it is in sequence, either it is in RE framework. Okay, so the thing is, while while doing that use cases, yes, definitely the scenarios has to be taken consideration, that what kind of exceptions can be occurred, even if they are not mentioned in the documents, but we have to think by ourselves that what else can be done. Like that, now even you added one point, that like, giving the example of three banks. Okay, what if the company adds two more banks or one more bank, or what if they change replaces the bank with some another bank? So all these scenarios have to be considered, and yes, it comes in the logic, right? Okay,
Yeah.
and exceptions, we have to sit. Uh, First of all, after reading the documents, we have to sit quietly, or like first of all, we have to go by ourselves in that process, do it couple of times by ourselves, and then see what if the URL changes in future. If the company just brings the logo or change the name, what will happen? What kind of mods we can do? So yes, definitely all these kinds of things have to be cleared in the first go, or while just developing with the right person by asking the effective questions in very sensible language, which will make sense to everyone, and they will get what exactly my what's there in my mind, what exactly I have in my mind. And so even they don't get confused, and even I'm not confused, so it will save a lot of time. That is most precious thing, right?
Yeah.
So
I
yes,
agree.
definitely. This is the most valuable learnings what I got, A B C D. Yeah.
Yeah. Um, yeah. So I strongly believe in these four sort of like pillars, as I like to call them, because yeah, you can build an RPA career on just knowing a little bit about development, low code, no code, and I've had that discussion with so many of my peers and even people higher up, uh, like multiple levels up above the kind of role that I play. But yes, you can absolutely just as they say, low code, no code, and that's why I said it's a promise, but a promise made by the technology companies. And it's a promise, or it is true as far as, or as long as you understand what else goes along with it. So as an example, UiPath works on a the underlying framework is .NET framework. If you know what .NET is, it's Microsoft's own framework for its programming language. So that if you have heard about things like Visual Basic or C Sharp, they all work on the .NET framework. UiPath is also very closely integrated with .NET framework. So if you're familiar with VB, or if you're familiar with C Sharp, then you will find it much easier to understand what is happening inside UiPath. It's not a necessity, like you're not required to know, because you could just go install UiPath Studio on your machine, open a project. By default it is created in VB fashion, like
Yeah.
VB, based on VB, but you could change it to C Sharp. But then what exactly changes if you change the project type? Do you know that? And what are the
I
rules,
really
or
had.
what are the minor changes that happen? Yeah, sorry.
Yeah, sorry. Shall I ask? Shall I interrupt? Okay,
Yeah.
so I had a question in this. Like when first in the beginning when I started with UiPath, once you open the process, there's an option. Okay, you want to select VB or C sharp. So I don't know what happened, but I went with C sharp without knowing that it should be in the VB.
Mm-hmm.
I was not knowing anything, but I just tried to do the things by myself. But later on, it went more confusing because I was less aware with the activities, what else I can do. Even I was not knowing the scenarios what I can do. So I left it there itself. But yes,
Mm-hmm.
in the first, I still remember the first process when I started doing in UiPath was this thing, C sharp. So so I don't have that much of guts to go there and see exactly.
Yeah. Yeah, so just to uh, you know talk about that point that Anirudh just made, when you start a new process, you're given an option. Sorry, is my screen still visible? Are you able to see the screen?
Yes, yes.
Okay. So when you start a new process, no matter what type, it'll ask you whether you want VB or C sharp as the language. And so this goes back to that point I was making with D is equal to development, which is what changes. I mean, it does change a lot of different things, but at the highest level, the biggest difference is syntax. So if you build a project in VB versus in C sharp, it's all low code, no code, or drag and drop. So will it change a lot? It'll probably not. Like it probably won't change a lot. But if you are someone who understands the differences in VB and C sharp, you might find one more comfortable than the other. A lot of C sharp developers would want to build their project in C sharp, not VB. But if you compared a project that is created in VB versus C sharp, if the steps that they are supposed to take is, let's say, a very simple example would be open Notepad and type my name, or say today is, and just type the date, whatever date it is today. If that's a very simple example of how programs are written. So if you wrote it in VB and if you wrote it in C sharp, they the outcome will look much similar. If you looked at a UiPath automation that is doing that, the code or the sequence will look quite similar. But what will change is how you access those variables. For example, if you wanted to access today's date, in one you could just simply say today, or current date. So there is syntax for that. But if you wanted to go slightly deeper than that, for example, if you wanted to type the date in a certain format, which is ddmmyy or dd/mm/yy, the syntax might change just slightly. In VB, you access variable components in a different way, slightly different than how you would do that in C sharp. And these are the kind of things that really become relevant when you actually start building processes in those two types. So
Yes.
again, this is why the D is equal to development point in, that's somewhat important. So so yeah, that's what I had to say about ABCD. Definitely take that with you, and think about that. We will catch up again to
Yes.
see how you've been going with the interview prep. And yeah, for the next steps, I think so. For everyone watching, this concludes our six session series, and I think we've made it simple enough to follow that progress tracker. Let me bring it up on screen again just so that everyone can see that. So yeah, if you wanted to set one up for yourself, I'll link a template in the description. It might take maybe another day, or I'll just clean up the template for everyone's use and update with the relevant links. But if you wanted to follow along, I'll invite you to sign up, or subscribe. And uh, I haven't set up any kind of sign up uh, workflow yet. So if you need to get access to this template, just you can directly email me at ash@rpaforeveryone.com. If you go to my YouTube profile about tab, you will find that email there. You can directly email me and I'll be happy to answer any questions you have. And also, if you would like to do this just like Anirudh has been doing, I'm very happy to have the same series again. And of course, we will add a few more learnings that we both have learned along the way. For example, I was talking about D is equal to development and learning a little bit about code. So if you wanted to learn from scratch and in a very fun way, you could go and get a free account on a website called codecademy.com. So Anirudh, let me write that down for you as well. So go to codecademy.com. They i i don't have an affiliate link with them. They're not sponsoring me for saying this, but I found this really a good resource. I was referred to this resource by a very good friend of mine when I started learning RPA. And because I myself, I'm not a .NET developer to begin with. I was new to VB and C Sharp as well when I started 8 years ago. I had no idea what VB and C Sharp were different, and not that all programming, all RPA platforms were offering the distinction before, but still, I had to do a lot of Googling to get the syntax right. And I'm a Java developer to begin with. So VB is quite different from Java. And I had my own challenges learning. But websites like codecademy.com have been really helpful. So definitely, you can get a free account on that and learn a few basic things, basic components on how coding works. So give it a try. And if you have any challenges, I'm happy to walk you through any of the questions that you have specifically about the language. So do that. All those who are watching, drop me an email. Again, it's ash@rpaforeveryone.com. Go to my YouTube tab, you will find it there as well. And if you have any questions, I'm happy to have a call with you. If you want to do it on YouTube live, let's do it, or else I'll answer your questions personally on email as well. So I'm looking forward to hearing from you, and I just wish you all the best in your journey to becoming a professional RPA developer. And Anirudh,
Thank you
great to
so
hear.
much.
Yeah. I just wanted to thank you for taking this brave step to completely do it in public, because it's not the easiest thing to do, to come out and say that this is what I'm struggling with. So even if it's just starting a new career, it is very um, it's a very strange and kind of frightening journey, which I did 8 years ago. I was not like I said, RPA was not always here. So I've been working since before RPA became a really popular name, and
Yeah,
it was difficult to begin with, even for me. So I know how hard it is, and I know that you're putting in a lot of hard work. So all of this will pay off. I have absolute faith. So just keep doing what you're doing. I think you've come really far in just 6 weeks. So
fingers
that is the
crossed.
point. Like, this is session 6, and we've been doing this once every week. So
Yeah,
within just 6 weeks, I think you've come really far, and there's only, like, nowhere to go but up from here. So I wish
yes.
you all the best, and I'll be checking in with you. We'll have more sessions in future, but as far as the learning journey goes, this is the last session, and thank you all for joining. We will be doing a similar series in future with someone else who might be interested in doing that. So if you are that person, write to me and we'll set it up. Thank you, and good night.
Thank you so much.